Tractate Bechoros, General Introduction. When all the firstborn of Egypt, from humans to livestock, were killed in the last of the 10 plagues, God forever sanctified the firstborn of Israel by sparing them. Bamidbar chapter 3, verse 13. The laws defining this sanctification were then given to Moshe to teach to the people. Shmos chapter 13, verse 2, and verses 12 through 16. Tractate Bechoros is primarily devoted to a discussion of the laws of the Bechor, firstborn, plural Bechoros, as they relate both to humans and animals. There are 3 classifications of Bechor: human, kosher livestock, which applies to cows, sheep, and goats, and non-kosher livestock, which is limited to donkeys. Each classification has a different set of laws, and each is dealt with separately in this tractate. This tractate also discusses, in chapter 7, the blemishes that invalidate a Kohen from performing the Avodah, temple service, which is included here because of the many parallels between the blemishes disqualifying Kohanim and those disqualifying the Bechor of livestock, chapter 6. Also included are the laws of Meiser of animals, the animal tithe, chapter 9, because the sacrificial rules that apply to the animal Meiser are almost identical to those of the Bechor. See Tosafos 53a. Definition of a Bechor. There are 3 basic criteria that qualify a firstborn for Bechor status. It must be a male, it must be the firstborn of its mother, and, according to the prevailing halachic opinion, it must emerge naturally, rather than by caesarean section. See Mishnah in chapter 2, Mishnah 9, and chapter 8, Mishnah 2, see Yoredea 305:24 and 315:2. These criteria apply to every Bechor, whether human, kosher livestock, or non-kosher livestock. Another law that the firstborn son receives a double share of the inheritance is subject to different criteria. See below section 3b. A miscarriage is often reckoned a first birth for the purposes of Bechor, with the result that the subsequent birth of the first fully developed offspring does not qualify as the birth of a Bechor. We will now discuss the 3 classifications of Bechor: non-kosher livestock, and human, in that order, which is the order in which they appear in the tractate. 1. The firstborn donkey. The firstborn offspring of a donkey, if it is a male, acquires sanctity at birth, see Shmos, chapter 13, verse 13. The donkey is the only non-kosher animal subject to the laws of Bechor. A firstborn donkey is known as a Peter Chamor, literally womb-opening donkey. A. The mitzvah of Peter Chamor. There is a mitzvah to redeem the firstborn male donkey with a sheep or a goat. Shmos chapter 13, verse 13. See chapter 1, Mishnah 7. After redemption, the sheep or goat is given to a Kohen, and the donkey becomes permissible for use by its owner. Prior to redemption, however, the owner is forbidden to derive any benefit from his Peter Chamor. Once the redemption has been performed, the donkey may be used immediately, even before the Kohen receives the lamb. The lamb possesses no sanctity, and the Kohen may do with it as he pleases. See Gemara, end of 11b. Someone who does not have a sheep or goat with which to redeem his firstborn donkey may redeem it with something that is equal in value to the donkey. A sheep or goat, however, may be used for redemption even if it is worth less than the donkey it is redeeming. See Gemara on 11a. If the owner declines to redeem his firstborn donkey, he must decapitate it. See Shmos chapter 13, verse 13. The donkey must then be buried, since no benefit may be derived from the carcass. See chapter 1, Mishnah 7. B. Exemptions. These laws apply only to a firstborn donkey owned fully by Israel, i.e. a Jew who is not a Kohen or Levi. A donkey belonging to a Kohen or Levi is not subject to Bechor laws. See chapter 1, Mishnah 1. However, Kohanim and Levim are subject to the laws pertaining to the Bechor of a kosher animal. See chapter 2, Mishnah 1. Should an idolater possess even a partial ownership in a fetus or its mother, that fetus, when firstborn, contains no sanctity and is exempt from Bechor laws. This principle is applicable not only to donkeys, but also to kosher animals. See chapter 1, Mishnah 1, and chapter 2, Mishnah 1. Similarly, the exemption of donkeys belonging to Kohanim and Leviim applies even when they have a partial ownership in the firstborn donkey or its mother. See Yoredea 321:21. The Peter Chamor is discussed in chapter 1. 2. The firstborn of a kosher animal. The law of Bechor applies to 3 species of kosher animals: cows, sheep, and goats. These are the only animals fit to be offered on the Mizbeach. See Devarim chapter 15, verse 19. The Bechor of a cow, sheep, or goat acquires sanctity at birth and is automatically consecrated to be brought as a korban, sacrificial offering, in the Beis Hamikdash temple. See Vayikra chapter 27, verse 26 with Ramban. Nevertheless, there is a mitzvah for the owner of the flock to declare it sanctified as a Bechor. See Arachin 29a. The owner himself does not bring the Bechor to the Beis Hamikdash. Rather, he gives it to a Kohen. See Bamidbar chapter 18, verse 18. What the Kohen does with the Bechor depends on whether it is a tam, unblemished, literally perfect animal, or a Baal Mum, blemished animal. A. Unblemished Bechor. If the animal is unblemished, it is brought by the Kohen as a korban in the Beis Hamikdash. The Bechor is in the category of Kodashim Kalim, korbanos of lesser holiness. After it is slaughtered in the Beis Hamikdash and its blood is applied to the Mizbeach, only certain of its fats and organs, known as amurin, are burned on the Mizbeach, while the bulk of its meat is awarded to its owner, the Kohen. This meat may be eaten anywhere within the walls of Jerusalem from the day of its slaughter through the next day. See General Introduction to Zevachim. Unlike other Kodashim Kalim, however, the meat of the Bechor may be eaten only by Kohanim, their wives, children, and their Canaanite slaves. See Zevachim, chapter 5, Mishnah 8. B. Blemished Bechor. Like any korban, a Bechor that has a permanent blemish is disqualified from being offered on the Mizbeach. Like all blemished korbanos, it therefore falls to a lesser state of holiness, disqualified korbanos, which, subject to certain restrictions, may be slaughtered and eaten outside the Beis Hamikdash as ordinary meat, chulin. Generally, disqualified korbanos of this kind must be redeemed before they may be slaughtered outside the Beis Hamikdash, with the proceeds being used to purchase a replacement korban. The blemished Bechor, however, is an exception to this rule in that it may be slaughtered outside the Beis Hamikdash without redemption. Thus, when a Bechor becomes blemished, the Kohen who owns it may slaughter it and eat it anywhere. Similarly, if the Bechor is born blemished or becomes blemished before being given to a Kohen, it must still be given to a Kohen. It then becomes his property and he may slaughter and eat it. The meat of the blemished Bechor may be eaten even by non-Kohanim and even by a Tameh person or an idolater. See chapter 5, Mishnah 2. See therefore another opinion. When the Beis Hamikdash stood, a Bechor had to be consumed within the first year of life, if unblemished as a korban, and if blemished as the Kohen's meat. See Devarim chapter 15, verses 20 through 22. The destruction of the Beis Hamikdash has made offering a Bechor impossible. Thus, nothing can be done with an unblemished Bechor, and it must be left to roam until it develops a blemish. Once blemished, it may be slaughtered and eaten. This will be discussed further in section 5 below. C. Temporary and permanent blemishes. There are two types of blemishes, a temporary blemish and a permanent one. The types of temporary and permanent blemishes are listed in chapter 6. See also Rambam Hilchas Blas Hamikdash, chapter 7, and Isurei Mizbeach, chapter 2. Neither temporarily nor permanently blemished animals may be offered on the Mizbeach. See Vayikra, chapter 22, verse 20. However, a temporarily blemished animal becomes once again fit for offering once the blemish heals. In order for a Bechor to be permitted for slaughter outside the Beis Hamikdash, its blemish must be a permanent one. Before any blemished Bechor can be declared permissible for slaughter, it must be shown to an expert in blemishes. This person must possess a superior knowledge of both the laws of animal blemishes and the medical nature of blemishes. He must also receive permission from the Nasi in Eretz Yisrael before he can render decisions on blemished Bechoros. See Sanhedrin 5a and b. If the blemish is an obvious one, such as a blinded eye or a severed leg, and no expert is available, the animal may be shown to a panel of 3 laymen who may grant permission for its slaughter. See chapter 5, Mishnah 5. See there for another opinion. The expert who examines the blemish must also determine whether the blemish developed naturally or was inflicted by a person. An animal may not be slaughtered on the basis of a blemish that was intentionally inflicted. See chapter 5, Mishnah 3. Therefore, any blemish that may have been inflicted by man requires the testimony of a reliable witness to establish that it was not intentionally inflicted. See chapter 5, Mishnah 4. D. Shearing and working. The Torah prohibits working with or shearing the wool of a Bechor. See Devarim chapter 15, verse 19. This prohibition applies even to a blemished Bechor. As an additional safeguard, the sages also prohibited plucking the animal's wool by hand, unless it is for the purpose of slaughtering the animal or viewing a blemish. See chapter 3, Mishnah 3. Bechor of a kosher animal is discussed in chapters 2 through 6. 3. The firstborn human. A. Bechor in regard to redemption from a Kohen. A male child, who is the first to emerge from his mother's womb, is the subject of the requirement of Pidyon Haben, redeeming the firstborn son. See Shmos chapter 13, verse 2. This law requires the father of a Bechor to redeem his firstborn son 30 days after his birth by giving 5 selaim to a Kohen. See Shmos chapter 13, verse 13, chapter 34, verse 20, and Bamidbar chapter 18, verses 15 through 16. The equivalent in goods of 5 selaim can be substantiated for coins. See chapter 8, Mishnah 7. As with the Peter Chamor and Bechor of kosher animals, Bechor status regarding Pidyon Haben is determined entirely by his being the firstborn of the mother. It is irrelevant whether he is the first child of his father. However, it is the father's obligation to pay for the redemption. See Kedushin 29a. Thus, it is possible for a man to be required to perform the mitzvah of Pidyon Haben more than once, if he has children from more than one wife. See chapter 8, Mishnahs 1 and 3. If the father dies or for some reason fails to redeem his son, the Bechor must redeem himself upon reaching adulthood. See Kedushin. The redemption takes effect only when the Kohen receives the 5 salim. Thus, if a father sets them aside and they are then lost, he must give another 5 selaim to a Kohen. The law of redemption is applicable only if both parents are Israelim. If the father is a Kohen or Levi, or if the mother is the daughter of a Kohen or a Levi, no redemption is required. See chapter 2, Mishnah 1. No redemption is required for a stillborn baby or even for one that dies within 30 days of birth. B. Bechor in regard to inheritance. Another law, not directly related to those discussed until this point, is that when a man dies and his sons inherit his estate, his firstborn receives a double share of the inheritance. See Devarim chapter 21, verse 17. Unlike the mitzvah of Pidyon Haben, which is dependent upon the Bechor being the firstborn of his mother, the extra share of inheritance is awarded only to the Bechor who is the firstborn of his father, regardless of whether he is the mother's firstborn. See chapter 8, Mishnah 1. Moreover, the Bechor receives a double share only of the father's estate, not the mother's. See chapter 8, Mishnah 9. Another distinguishing feature of the law of inheritance is that a male child who is born after a miscarriage or stillborn is generally considered a Bechor in regard to this law, and he inherits a double share of the father's estate. See chapter 8, Mishnah 1, Rambam Hilchos Nachalos 2:10. The human Bechor is discussed in chapter 8. 4. Questionable Bechor. There are several instances of a questionable Bechor, that is, when it is unclear whether a person or animal is a Bechor. One example is where the mother gave birth to twins, a male and a female, and it is unknown if the male emerged first, in which case it is a Bechor, or if the female emerged first, in which case neither one is a Bechor. Now, the fundamental rule governing cases of a question regarding ownership is the burden of proof is on the one who seeks to take from his fellow. That is, if one person is in possession of property and another claims it as his, it is treated as belonging to the one in possession of it, and it is the responsibility of the other person to prove otherwise. Accordingly, a father need not give the 5 selaim to a Kohen if it cannot be proven that a Bechor was indeed born to him. See chapter 8, Mishnah 3. Similarly, a son cannot claim the Bechor share of his father's estate unless he can prove that he is indeed the firstborn. For the same reason, a questionable Bechor of a kosher animal need not be given to a Kohen. Since it is in the possession of the owner at the time the question arises, it is up to the Kohen to prove his claim to the questionable animal. See chapter 2, Mishnah 6 through 8. This, however, is only as far as the question of ownership is concerned. An animal that is a Bechor is sanctified, and a doubt regarding the sanctity of the animal is a doubt regarding a biblical prohibition. For example, the prohibition of slaughtering an unblemished Bechor outside the Beis Hamikdash. Such a situation of doubt must be dealt with stringently. Therefore, the owner may not slaughter it outside the Beis Hamikdash, since it might be a Bechor. At the same time, it may not be offered in the Beis Hamikdash, since it might not be sacred, and the Torah forbids offering a non-sacred animal in the Beis Hamikdash. Therefore, nothing can be done with an unblemished questionable Bechor, and it must graze until it develops a blemish. Once it develops a permanent blemish, it may be slaughtered outside the Beis Hamikdash and eaten by the owner, as may any blemished Bechor. However, the owner may not work the blemished animal or shear it because of the possibility that it is indeed a Bechor. Along the same lines, if there is a doubt whether a male donkey was the first offspring, the owner must redeem it in order to remove any sanctity it may have. But there is no requirement to give the sheep or goat used for the redemption to a Kohen, since that is a monetary question rather than a question regarding a prohibition. See Chapter 1, Mishnah 3. Here too, we apply the principle that the burden of proof is on the one who seeks to take from his fellow. Thus, for the Kohen to have a right to the sheep or goat, he must prove that the donkey is a Bechor. Since he cannot prove that, the animal is kept by the owner and is permissible for use. 5. Bechor in our times. The Bechor laws apply even in the absence of the Beis Hamikdash and are therefore in effect in our times. While performing the mitzvah of the redemption of the firstborn son is relatively common, the redemption of a firstborn donkey with a sheep or goat is today a rare phenomenon, largely due to the scarcity of Jewish-owned donkeys. Jewish ownership of kosher livestock is more common, and the Bechor law applies to any firstborn male calf, lamb, or kid born to Jews' animals. Nevertheless, it is customary nowadays to cause these firstborn to be exempt from the Bechor laws by initially selling a share of the mother to a non-Jew, so that people should not transgress the stringent laws regarding a Bechor. See Tosfos 3b. When the Beis Hamikdash is rebuilt speedily in our days, the Kohanim will once again be able to offer the Bechor of a kosher animal on the Mizbeach as in earlier times.